guys know what that could mean?
But in the future.
Exactly. It was like Zoom, but in the future. And that could be really, really good for medicine because if that man, he had a brain injury, right? They were trying to figure out what was wrong with his brain. And they could talk with the best neurosurgeon in the world. They could talk with someone that was really, really good at figuring out what was wrong with brains without ever leaving their own house, which is really cool, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What was something that they had to do to share information? When they were looking at it, what did they have to do? What was he looking at?
The problem of I think that is I don't know how to say cerebro.
The brain.
The brain, yeah, the brain.
They were looking at the brain, and the person was only in one location, right? So in order for that person that was somewhere else, the fancy future Zoom, to be able to look at his brain, they had to use imaging technology, right? They had to be able to make a really, really lifelike picture so that he could look at the brain. Can you guys think of some things like that we have now? Some types of technologies that let us look at pictures of things that are in our bodies?
Like the scans that are in the hospitals.
The X-rays.
Exactly. X-rays and ultrasounds. So those are two things that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about how do those things actually work. Do you guys have any ideas?
No.
No? That's okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is something called an ultrasound. Have you guys heard of that before?
Yes, but in Spanish.
Yes.
How do you say it in Spanish? ¿Cómo se dice?
Ultrasonido.
Ultrasonido. Bien. So this is what an ultrasound gives you, right? It's most commonly used to look at babies when they're in the stomach, right? Have you guys seen these types of pictures?
Yes.
Okay, so when we're looking at this, do you guys know what kind of picture this is? Is it 2D? Is it 3D? Do you know what that means?
2D.
Yes. So we're seeing a 2D picture of something. Can you guys, when you're looking at a two-dimensional thing, what is some challenge there? When you're
to see what it is.
Yeah. Right? When we're looking at two-dimensional, we're looking at a cross section, right? We've taken it and we've cut it and are now looking at one little plane, right? We only have one image. We don't see the whole three-dimensional picture, right? So how do you guys think this works? How, you guys see these types of pictures where there's a computer and you have a nurse or a doctor that puts some sort of like gooey gel on your stomach, right, to look at a baby, and they put this processor on it and they kind of scan it. What that actually is doing is when it says ultrasound, it's using sound waves. So when you hear things, you're hearing sound waves, and the different sounds that you're talking, when you're talking really high pitched or really low, those are different frequencies, right? So when you say frequency of a wave is how fast up or down something is going. When it's really high pitched, you have a lot of up and down because you have a really high frequency. When you have a really low pitch or a really low tone, a wave is going slow and you have really big waves. So what do you think ultrasound means? Do you think it's high frequency or low frequency?
A high frequency.
Exactly. Ultrasound is really high frequency sound waves. It's something that we cannot hear. Our ears don't have the ability to hear ultrasound waves. So what we're looking at when we see this picture is actually reflections of waves. So these waves, this little thing right here, it's emitting sound waves, but that are just too high frequency for our ears to hear. And when these waves hit different fluid barriers, so right, your body isn't one material all the way through. You have your skin and you have your muscle, and then you have, for a baby, you have the uterus and then the baby, and then the rest of the mom's body, right? There's different layers of things. So when these sound waves hit one of those barriers, right? When they hit a barrier between the baby and the water surrounding the baby, the amniotic fluid is what that's called, there's a bounce back. Your sound waves like, oh, there's something different here, and it goes back. And then this computer, there's a whole microprocessor in here that takes those signals, that bounce back, and it calculates, it's really, really, really small time frames, like to a millionth of a second. And it calculates the differences between how far the signal went before it bounced back. And based on those calculations, the computer can put together a picture and it can show you what it looks like at that level. Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah.
So can you guys
Yes.
think of anything else that uses something like this? Does
When
this sound?
you broke a bone, you need to have X-ray. It's like similar.
X-rays are similar. We're going to talk about X-rays a little bit later, but I'm thinking of something that's not even medicine anymore. Something else that's similar to this. It's kind of cool. Do you guys know that there's animals that use ultrasound?
Yes, I see a photograph. A photography.
Exactly. So different animals, two really common ones are bats and dolphins, use ultrasound to see. They don't have very good eyesight. Bats fly around at night. Dolphins are swimming really deep down in the ocean. So there's not a lot of light for them to use to see where they're going or how to catch their food, right? So bats and dolphins use this same kind of ultrasound in a process called echolocation. So echolocation is when they make a really loud, high frequency noise. They send out this sound wave, and then they have ears that are sensitive enough to hear that wave. So when that wave bounces back, they now know, I heard something, something is there. So ultrasound is kind of based off this concept of echolocation to allow animals to find their food.
It's like a signal.
It is a signal.
Oh.
What were you saying?
Like the dolphin do a like sound, and then the fish do another sound, and then the dolphin know where is the fish.
So the fish actually aren't making a sound. So this is something good that you brought up. The dolphin's hearing the sound that it made bounce off the fish. So if this is a fish and I'm a dolphin, I make my sound and it's really, really high frequency. Oh, it hit the fish and now bounces back and my dolphin can hear it. And if there wasn't a fish here, the sound would just keep going, right? But because there was a fish there, the dolphin, oh, there's sound, I now know. Isn't that kind of cool?
Yes.
So bats do the same thing with bugs. You've ever seen a bat swooping around at night? It's catching little mosquitoes and things, and it's using echolocation to find them, even though they're really, really small. So their ears are super, super sensitive. So we as people have kind of seen this thing in animals, and that's inspired things like submarines. When you're underwater, you need to be able to know, is there an iceberg? Is there an island? Do I have enough space to be swimming around under there? As a submarine, they use echolocation, but so do ultrasounds. They use ultrasound going back and forth to make a picture so that we can see what we're looking at. So most ultrasounds right now actually give two-dimensional pictures, but there's a process called 3D ultrasound that is currently being developed so that you can see a 3D picture and a 3D model of babies. Isn't it kind of cool that you can actually take pictures of them in their stomach and you can see what they look like? So that's kind of the first type of imaging that they could use, is an ultrasound type of image, where it's giving you a picture with these sound waves and how they're bouncing back and forth. The other type of imaging that's really common to use is something called X-rays, which we talked about, right? So X-rays work a little bit differently than ultrasounds. They don't bounce. An X-ray sends a specific type of wavelength. So I told you guys that sound was different frequencies of sound waves. Well, light is different frequencies of light waves. And depending on where you're at on that frequency spectrum, you get different types of waves. So when we see visible light, the reason you have different colors is because your wavelength is a different length. These are measured on the scale of nanometers. Do you guys know how small a nanometer is? It is if you take a millimeter and make it 6 times smaller, but not 6 times smaller, 6 tens smaller. So you're going down, it's 0.9000000000009 or 001 nanometers to 1 meter. So it's really, really small and we can't see it. But our eyes have things called corneas and retinas and the different rods and cones in our eyes that can detect these different wavelengths. In our eyes, the human visible light spectrum is about 400 or so nanometers to about 700 or so nanometers. And that's what we're able to see. And based on that wavelength, we get different colors. But in order to do an X-ray, if you can see on this chart right here, X-rays are even smaller. So they're even smaller, so they're faster, right? They're even faster frequencies than what we can see. And when we shine these X-rays through a person's body, right? There's an X-ray generator, so it has to be able to generate that really fast wavelength. And the X-ray goes through an object. So this is looking at a person's arm. And it goes through it, and on the other side of the X-ray machine, you usually like lay on a bed or on a table, there's a detector. And so what this detector do is it looks for X-rays. But do you guys think that X-rays can pass through all the parts of your body the same way? No, that's right. Different parts of your body block the X-rays. And they make it so that they can't go through it. So like bones and hard tissue is more dense than like your skin or your blood, right? Because it's hard, it's solid. So because of that, it's harder for your, like the X-ray to get through your body. So what it does is it produces these pictures where if there's like blank space, it wasn't there. But if there was a dark spot, it shows, or the light spots, sorry, are your bone. And it's showing up because the X-rays couldn't get through. So then what that allows us to do is we can look for things like cracks or breaks or fractures. So both X-rays and ultrasounds use different types of wavelengths, different ways we can detect it. And then once we've detected the signal that we are looking at, it uses a computer program to put together a picture. Do you guys have any questions about X-rays or ultrasounds? No?
I have a question. That it is like an ultrasound or X-ray that can see organs?
So ultrasounds can see organs. X-rays are really good for seeing hard tissues. And when I say that, I mean things like your bone or your skull. So X-rays is used to see things like bones. Ultrasounds can be used to see organs. And there is another type of imaging machine called an MRI machine. So MRI machine. So MRIs use a different type of energy. They use magnets. So they use something called magnetic fields. So you guys probably know that magnets have a positive end and a negative end. Have you guys heard that before? So when you look at a magnet, like any old magnet that's like sticking to metal, it has one side that's called the positive side and one side that's the negative side. And the positive side will stick to the negative side and they'll smush together. But the negative side and the negative side will repel each other and don't want to interact. That's called a magnetic field. There's forces created by magnets. And magnets do that by using charge. So have we talked about at all atoms when we look at what they are, atoms have protons and electrons, right? Protons are little baby particles. Atoms are the smallest piece of thing that makes up matter. An atom they're what gives you elements. They're what we change when we do things like chemistry. It's what you study when you do physics. An atom has a positively charged particle called a proton and a negatively charged particle called an electron.
I hear that atoms never touch.
They never touch. That is true. Most atoms are made of empty space. And that's because on a really small, micro, little baby level of atoms, it's really small, right? The electrons have a negative charge, and the other electrons also have a negative charge. So they don't ever want to touch, right? And electrons don't just stay in one position, they're always moving around an atom. And they create something called an electron cloud. And so depending on where your electrons are, they're creating, I'm taking up space. I'm an electron. I move really, really fast in my area. Like I am here, and this is my electron area. You have another electron that's here. They don't want to touch because they're both negatively charged. So when you're looking at magnets, opposites attract. That's where that phrase comes from, if you've ever heard that said before. So an MRI machine uses this same concept of a magnetic field and of magnets, of how charges are aligned. And it takes a really strong magnet and it sends out pulses. And what that pulse does, this is getting a little complicated, is it takes protons, your positively charged particles in an atom, and it makes them all line up. It makes a magnetic field and all the protons want to be in a line. And then what happens is that magnet pulses. And so the protons are only there when the charge is on. And then when the protons move and the pulse turns back, so the protons want to be over here. But when the pulse turns on, they have to get in line, right? They want to be over here, but they have to be in line. And then when the pulse turns off, they're going to go back to where they want to be. And we can use computers to measure how the protons, which are parts of atoms, are moving. And based on their movement and their movement speeds in relation to this really big magnetic field produced by the MRI machine, we can take pictures. And MRI machines are what's really, really good for seeing organs and tissues. I want to see a brain scan. They're really, really good at taking really detailed pictures. So aren't this picture, you can see the different folds in the brain. You can see where someone's nose is. You can see the outside of their skull. So all of these pictures from an MRI machine are more detailed than an ultrasound picture. And that's because it's something called resolution. So your resolution refers to your smallest part that you can see. And we're using protons here, right? And protons are smaller than either the ultrasound or the light that we were using. So it gives us a better picture. Do you guys have any questions about how MRIs work?
No.
But yeah, so these different types of things we can do right now. Like we're already able to take pictures that look like this of somebody's brain. And we're using all of this technology and things that we can do. We're using all of these already. So imagine how much in the future, like what we saw in that video, how all of these things are going to really be able to be used and to be shared. And if we can take better and better pictures and we can communicate better, we're going to be able to solve a lot more problems, right? That is all the things that I wanted to show you guys today. We only have a couple minutes left. Do you guys have any questions or comments? Anything you thought was cool? What was your guys' favorite thing that we talked about while we've been meeting?
I like the part of the ultrasounds of the animals that they do that to search the other animal to eat.
Yeah. No,
or
it's really
to look after.
Yeah. That specific process is called echolocation. If you wanted to do a little bit more research by yourself, it's called echolocation. It's really cool. What about you, Cami? What did you like to learn about?
I don't hear. Can you repeat?
Okay. I said, what did you like learning about? What was your favorite thing that we talked about?
Ah, I like the ultrasound. It was very interesting.
Yeah. No, it's definitely some really cool stuff that we're able to do. And it's because everybody wants to keep getting better and keep being able to help more people that we keep getting better and better at what we're doing, which is really, really cool, right? So I think we have less than a minute left before our meeting's over. But thank you guys for coming and for listening and for answering all of my questions. I really enjoyed getting to work with you and talk with you guys.
Me too, Maddie.
I will see you guys later. Bye, everybody.